launching a rocket.
Yeah.
Except
Okay.
I'm
Hello.
not a rocket.
Yeah,
Okay,
the launch
so
is
you
like
can
a.
hear me?
I
You
can
can
hear
hear me
you.
well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so since I live in Athens, in Greece, I think a lot about this issue. I do believe that there is an ancient Indian culture, yes, indeed, very ancient. But I also believe that most of the institutions and the culture of India today does not really have an ancient origin. It has a more medieval origin.
Mm.
So I don't think, for example, that Buddhism today is important in India. It's not very important. And the caste system in ancient India, I don't think was very developed at all, if it existed at all. So my point is that, ancient Indian culture exists, but I believe that India as a settled society is basically a medieval creation. So my opinion is that the first empires in India are basically medieval and not Ashoka or even the Guptas. These are no doubt very interesting people or dynasties, but I don't think that we can consider ancient India as an imperial culture. That's my point. And this is the difference with Rome and also to some extent with Greece and not, of course, especially with ancient Iran. That was really an imperial culture. And ancient India under Ashoka I think it was a kind of religious paradigm shift to some extent, but Ashoka did not create an empire. At least I don't believe that. This is nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, these ancient empires were often nothing to be particularly fond of. They were often quite brutal. But in India, people have tried to make it look like under Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire was similar to the Persian and Roman empires, except that it was more enlightened. This was the thing. People wanted to make it look like India had an ancient empire, but morally superior to the Roman and the militaristic Romans and the militaristic Persians. And I personally don't believe that there was an empire in the Mauryan times that can be compared. And the reason for that is, in my opinion at least, that agriculture spread in India rather slowly because of the monsoon climate. It took more effort to bring the whole subcontinent under cultivation because it was a wetter climate. And except of course in Sindh, in the Thar Desert where you are from, that was of course easier to bring under cultivation. So there we have the Indus Valley culture, which is indeed very old. But in the rest of India, for example, Bengal and North India or the Tamil Plains, it was very difficult to bring the land under cultivation because it had to be cleared. So my opinion is that took longer than in Iran or the Mediterranean, which has a drier climate. There you could extend agriculture much more easily. So the first empires that were possible in South Asia, in the subcontinent, in most parts of the subcontinent, in my view, are from the early medieval period. For example, the Gurjara Pratiharas, Palas, Rashtrakutas, and so on. Sometimes we call them proto-Rajput empires. Whereas under Ashoka and even under the Guptas, I think that we don't really look at empires there, but more like ritual sovereignty. You understand? You understand?
Yes, yes, Professor. I was on mute so that I make no disturbance.
Ah, okay, so
Um,
this is my first point, which is a bit heretical because, as I said, everybody wants to have ancient empires in their history.
Everyone
But
wants their of history to be, more elite, more classic, more, just something more as compared to any other civilization, so as to say.
well, it's very prestigious to have an ancient empire. That's what people want to believe. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I think it also drives every society. I mean, drives so much confidence or I would say justification for whatever they do in the current times, and they drive that
Yes, yes,
legitimacy back, so that they can trace it and have some XYZ reasons to justify their behavior or the kind of attitude or conduct they have in present modern
yes.
times.
It has a huge implication for modern political culture
Mm.
everywhere, even in Europe.
So, how do
The
you the study of ancient history has like changed? I mean, in your span of many decades as a professor, what was it before? What was the professors and historians' perception of of ancient history when you had just started it, and how has it gone about change? What
yeah,
kind of change?
yeah. Well, I felt that it was, in the case of India, a very nationalistic interpretation. It was idealized extremely. Ashoka was a kind of model for the whole world. It was like the most humane imperial personality that we have in, sometimes compared to the philosopher king of Plato. And nobody could find a philosopher king in Europe, but we could find it in India. And this is what people like to believe, that Ashoka was the philosopher king of Plato. But I don't think we know anything about Ashoka except that he has a few inscriptions. Yes, and they are ethical in content. But we don't know whether he was a philosopher at all.
Yeah, we don't know if it was normative, prescriptive, or whether it was implementary at that point in time, whether it was written as an aspirational
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
statement, something like that. But
Well, it's certainly noble ideals. However, how many people in India would even know about this? Subcontinent is very large.
and about comparing other civilizations on the same end, if we talk about Chinese civilization or the Middle Eastern civilizations or civilizations
Um,
in
yeah, I believe
Yep.
that there were like really militaristic, centralized empires in Iran
Hmm.
and also in the Mediterranean, the Roman Empire, for example.
Hmm.
But this did not exist in India. Moreover, the role of cities is much less important in Indian history, in my opinion. This is another thing that people should take a very hard look at.
Hmm.
The cities in India were in an environment that was very, say, unstable because of the monsoon. And the cities in the Indian plains were very vulnerable, fragile, and for this reason often didn't last very long or were made again and again. They couldn't survive easily. So ancient cities that survived until the modern age are extremely rare. And while I'm sitting here in Athens, okay, so Athens and
Beautiful.
Rome are they have survived for a long time, even though there were many problems. I believe that this fixation on urbanism is not a good start for Indian history.
Hmm.
What you want to look at is the history of settlement. But ancient cities were, I believe, in India were more like big villages
Hmm.
made of
Yeah.
perishable
Well, they were called
materials.
Mahajanapadas. In ancient history, we have the concept of Mahajanapadas. You have a Janpad, which is like a city state, and then Mahajanpad if it's a bigger city states, sort of, and Magad,
I
where
can I
was
can't
Magad
I
was a.
I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. So I was saying, Mahajanpads is like the bigger villages or the bigger city states. Magad is one of the city which is very famous because Ashoka uh, traces its history back to that city state. So yeah, it again it's a history of the elite, the history of the people of this of the states of the that is the information that was already noted down on paper. We do not have actual evidence of how many people lived in those times or what kind of life they lived, what was the lifestyle on a very grassroots level, and what kind of occupations people had. It's all written in the books, but we cannot practically be aware about whether all of it was true or not.
Yeah, well, my main point is that to look at Indian history as a series of urban revolutions is not
Hmm.
working very well for me.
Hmm.
There would be the first revolution would be the Indus Valley.
Hmm.
The second would be the Buddhist second urbanism that the people always talked about. And the third, of course, would be with the Delhi Sultanate.
The Mughal.
So that if you look at it that way, you have Indian history as a series of urban revolutions.
Hmm.
I believe that this is useless. I try to find another way of explaining Indian history.
Hmm.
You can say that all these cities in the Indus Valley, they were destroyed by the environment, but most of all. You know,
Hmm.
that is basically flooded in after when the Indus Valley was declining and being destroyed, it was usually by floods and river shifts and so
There are many
forth, and
theories
the
about
earthquake.
it, flooding, or
Pardon?
maybe there are many theories
Well,
about the same. There are many historiographies around it about whether it was a flood or whether
yeah,
Aryans,
yeah,
so-called
yeah,
Aryans came, or it was
yeah.
drought, slowly started moving
But
towards the south. There's so many theories around it.
well, yes, this is nowadays it's clearly shown by many archaeologists. But you can say the same thing about, for example, Angkor Wat in Cambodia. It
Hmm.
was abandoned. It was
Hmm.
abandoned because of hydrological disturbance. And nobody wants to bring these two separate cultures in connection with each other, but I think you should. I think
Hmm.
the whole area of the monsoon, or monsoon Asia, has a similar pattern of fragile
Hmm.
urbanism. You can look at Vijayanagara, same thing. And in fact, all the cities, even in Bengal, you can see that they were environmentally disrupted at some point and replaced by something else.
Hmm.
This was the pattern. Also in Indonesia, in Java, for example, which I consider to be part of medieval India, this is a thing that is another thing that people usually don't like. But I
Hmm.
believe that medieval India extended into Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
After all, we have Hinduism there.
Hmm. Yeah, we find
And
a lot of similarities in
yeah,
Indian culture and the gods and goddesses, especially when Buddhism also traveled up north and towards the east. We see many evolving Buddhism, as in Tantric Buddhism, evolving in those cities and state there. But the the core, the crux, actually kind of drags you back to the Indian subcontinent if we study it enough.
well, I usually use a concept of India that is much larger than the current India, not only
Mm. Right.
because Pakistan and
Yeah, the
Bangladesh and
very
Pakistan are,
yeah, yeah. the political
But
boundary is really recent, and
the
they will
political
not.
boundaries
Yeah,
today
yeah.
India is smaller than ever.
Hmm.
Today it's very small, even though it's a very big country. I always wonder
It was a big country,
how
and
it.
it was. I think it had much stronger impact because of the kind of geographical location. Also, it has. It's surrounded by water on the southern peninsula,
Yes,
and surrounded by mountains
the,
on the northern, and
many islands.
yeah, and many islands as well. Mm. So, how do you think
I,
the study of this ancient history has changed? Maybe the idea, like you said, nationalist history was
um,
more back then.
well,
How has it evolved?
one thing that is very striking to me is that ancient India isn't very much studied abroad.
Mm.
For example, I worked in the United States for maybe 30 years, and hardly anybody teaches ancient India.
Mm.
If you compare that to Roman Greece,
Mm.
every department of every university and school has a department of Greek and Roman studies.
Mm.
Now, of course, in South Asia itself, there are more people studying ancient India
Mm.
than abroad. But my
Mm.
point is that the field of ancient Indian studies has become very small.
Very small, yeah.
It's,
Uh,
it's much too
one,
small.
yeah, there's a professor, Vinay Lal. Sir is a professor at UCLA, and he's a history professor, and he teaches Indian history. And I've seen his during our graduation when we were doing studying history
Well,
honors.
yeah, but how many more do you know?
Very less, very few, and we had to research the whole internet to find something reliable, credible to study for our uh, exams, and very few videos. Nowadays we have these competitive exams in India, so people they have these coaching centers, and they upload these very short videos about some topics, and it might not be as thoroughly researched and referenced as a student studying history in honors would want. So Professor Vinilal is one
Well,
I know. He is
people study ancient India, but mostly religion,
right, right.
and that is
Because it
okay.
has an interconnectedness, that facet to kind of relate it with the other religions across the globe during that particular time period. So
Mhm.
maybe that is an
Yeah.
anchor.
Um, yes, people are interested in, for example, let's say Greek, Indo-Greek culture.
Indo-Greek culture.
Yeah, every time somebody in Greece, I meet somebody in Greece, they always want to know about Indo-Greek culture, which is an interesting development, of course. And I'm also interested in it. But another point I wanted to make is that in Roman times,
Hmm.
we always hear about the Roman trade, the the pepper and spice trade of the Romans.
Hmm.
And sure, it was interesting, but my opinion is that this was only the beginning of, well, major trade. It was actually much bigger in medieval times.
Is it? Yes, I.
Yes, it was very small in the Roman times. It was important and it was expensive, and it is not the oldest. We have, for example, evidence of pepper in Egypt, second
Hmm.
millennium BC. Pepper from Malabar, okay?
Hmm.
And so, yes, it is certainly ancient enough, two
Hmm.
millennia before Christ. But the Roman trade with India has hardly been described by more than two or three people who have like make it very clear that this is in an early stage of development. For example,
Hmm.
the Periplus. Have you heard of the Periplus?
No.
Periplus Maris Erythraei, the only source of the first century AD on
Hmm.
Roman trade, and it shows
Oh,
a very early form, very lowly developed, compared to the later situation. For
hmm,
example, in the time of the
hmm,
Abbasids and all the Muslim dynasties that are important. It
hmm,
is very big in early medieval times, but
hmm.
in ancient times, it's not very well developed. But again, because people are so hooked on the ancient history of their culture, they tend to
Right.
make a lot of it.
We
Well,
also have
so this is the
Buddhist.
problem, that people are addicted to the ancient history of their civilization.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one who says that. V.S. Naipaul once said that Indians are very proud of their ancient civilization. They are, in
Hmm.
fact, its victims. Its
Yeah.
victims. Now, I think the same is true for Europeans. I'm not saying that Indians are the only, and Iran is the same. And probably similar in China, but I don't know very much about China. So this is my point.
History
My
is a little too far. Even when I was writing my dissertation about the folk deity, I made a conscious effort to not to keep the timeline in frame, because even in 100
you have
years,
to.
many things.
Can
And
you speak in the microphone a little bit closer?
yeah, I was saying that even when I was writing my dissertation, this was one problem which I had to face, because my study, the folk deity I was studying about, she is an ancient folk deity, and she is said to be around 8th century CE. So I had to consciously keep that timeline in mind. There's so many things that did not exist back then, and
Yes,
tackling that
that's
is also and being in that timeline and thinking from that perspective. There is absolutely no technology. There's no water in Thar Desert. There is The water has come very recently after all the irrigation canals, and after independence. But it was a hard life. It was a
well
tough life.
outside of the Indus Valley, certainly, but you have to
Yes,
make an
I'm
exception.
talking about the lower belt
Yeah,
of Pakistan and the western area of India, where the Thar Desert is
yeah,
located, somewhere around that area. Mm.
yeah. Well, whatever there
Then
was, you have
we
very little.
find, yeah, we find these Buddhist statues. The one you were talking about, the Indo-Greek culture. There's a lot of Greek influence in these sculptures of Buddha, which we have in Sanchi, and people, students, especially who study Buddhism. They have this specific area where they study about the architecture in India, the school of architecture, which had significant influence from Roman and Greek people, artisans, artists who had come, traveled from there, and maybe lived here and stayed here thereafter.
Yes. No, that is of course quite true, but nonetheless, I believe that India, as we know it today, is essentially a medieval creation,
Hmm.
and we should get over this fixation with
Hmm.
the ancient past. Just like Europeans should not always pretend that their democracy goes back to ancient Greece. In fact, it
Hmm.
is more. It is owing more to the Vikings than to ancient Greece.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but nobody wants to know that,
Hmm.
and it
Nobody
owes more
wants
to the
to go to the root levels of the normal mundane life of people, and
right.
how it
They want to have a
they
sort of
want to know
lofty.
about the elites and
They
the
want
kind
a
of life
lofty beginning,
of the beginning, right?
something very elevated, like the ancient Greek origin of Europe. In
Hmm.
reality, Germanic
Not as, yeah.
tribal, the German tribes had more democracy than, and they influenced modern democracy more than ancient Greece. In fact, there are few countries that have had so little democracy as Greece. It lasted for about 180 years, and then there was Alexander the Great, and then the Hellenistic times, and then the Roman times, and then the Byzantine, and then the Ottomans. none of these had democracy.
Hmm.
Democracy was killed very quickly.
Hmm.
Plus, of course, there's also the embarrassing circumstance that the great
Hmm.
philosophers of ancient Greece did not like democracy very much.
Hmm.
You just look at Plato. He thought it was a recipe for anarchy, more or less, usually. So all these people in Europe who think that they should send their kids to school and learn about ancient Greece, they are also obsessed with the ancient origin of their culture because it sounds very dignified.
Sounds dignified,
It
and it
sounds,
gives them a sense of identity, which is kind of fading away for them, because their idea, I think, more than us, our ancestors had a much better idea of identity. They understood things better, because right now people are traveling all over the globe. They're moving here and there very smoothly in a very short span of time. So there's a loss of identity if someone settled in USA, someone from India is settled in USA, and their third generation settles somewhere in Japan. It becomes difficult for them to hold on to their sense of identity and who they are, whereas humans have always been tribals by nature and nomadic people. So to constantly remind themselves of, okay, this is who we are, I think they trace everything back to ancient history and try to derive a sense of security um,
yeah.
from it.
Um, well, so yeah, and I think that ancient Indian history should not be abandoned or anything, but people should stop pretending that everything is very ancient. I think,
Hmm.
for example, Europe is not a very old culture, and in some respects, India is a medieval culture as well, rather than an ancient one.
I myself
And
found it very. Hmm.
this is actually one of the things I try to correct. I think Indian history is very cluttered.
Hmm.
It has to be uncluttered.
Hmm.
People brought all kinds of ideas to it that are alien to it. Either
Hmm.
European ideas of ancient classical glory or political ideals, sometimes
Hmm.
Marxist ideas
Hmm.
about feudalism. All these ideas came from them, but we don't find them in the history. In fact, I think we should unclutter ourselves if we study Indian history. It has become too cluttered. I think
Hmm.
uncluttering is a very important but difficult process. It requires a great deal of criticism. And there's always a problem, of course, that you're talking about living scholars, and it's not so nice to tell you the living scholars that they are interpreting the history of their country according to their own desires, rather than following, let's say, a more empirical approach.
Hmm.
And it's also true when you look at the religion, for example, Islam and the other religions, that
Hmm.
also distorts it very much. People have religious ideas. It's the same in every country, but in India
Hmm.
too, this has become a big problem. And nowadays, it's again a problem, I think. The religious distortion of the past, very big in India today. Uh,
I think it's
and we
very
have the
difficult
same,
to scrap out Indian history, ancient Indian history, because it is deeply embedded in everyone since childhood. So, if you know about Ramayana, it is an epic Mahabharata
yeah,
Ramayana tales, right?
yes,
So, when
I remember
Ramayana
that.
was first aired in as a show, as a TV show, there was no man to be seen in the streets of India, and I'm talking about, I think, more than 20 years ago. There was no man to
Yes, I
be seen
remember that.
streets, yeah. And it's so surprising, because that culture, those stories, that identity of ancient history is so deeply embedded in every person in India, that they've not, for me, as I always thought, they've not tried to look past it. I mean, more before it, more beyond it. Maybe what was, if you talk about Indus Valley civilization, what was actually happening between the Buddhism and the Indus Valley civilization, and what kind of civilization might have existed before Indus Valley civilization, because we do find some
I can
elements of.
hardly hear you.
I'm saying, can you hear me now?
No,
I'm
it's
just.
difficult.
Can you hear me now?
Try it again. Yeah,
Yeah, so
better.
I was saying how deeply the culture of this ancient history and these stories are embedded in the minds and hearts of all Indians,
Yeah.
and important it is a part of syllabus for all the competitive exams in India, and whatever job you're applying for. I think it's something that is
Mm-hmm.
the least expected out of you. But for me, I've always thought of looking at the history between Buddhism and Indus Valley. Maybe there was something. There's a loop. There's a there's a hole we are missing. There was something between there, and even before Indus Valley civilization, there might be things that have existed. There might be people or civilizations that would have existed, but no one has actually, studied about it in that reverence, because they did not want to destroy their idea of this great
Yeah.
Indian
Yeah.
ancient history, because there are so many evidences of pottery, and I think the pottery and plates in southern India, which date much back to before than Indus Valley civilization as well. And that's surprising because it is on the other end of the subcontinent, and people don't talk about it. But the India we are talking about is the same. It shares that boundary as well. So that is surprising at some time,
Um,
at some point.
I don't know much about ancient Indian poetry. Where do you find it?
Pottery. It's in
Oh,
southern India.
pottery.
There
Yeah,
pottery,
pottery.
not
Yes, pottery.
pottery and plates. There's a
Yeah,
city
ceramics.
in
Yeah,
South India. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a city in
Yeah,
South
oh,
India, and they're
I totally understand that, but my point is that ancient Indian culture did not produce, for example, a lot of history
hmm.
writing.
It was a culture
History
of oral
writing.
history. Writing was not
Yes,
an important aspect of
yeah, but if you
Indian
look
history.
at the history of the Roman Empire, you have one attempt after the other to deal with that. And
Hmm.
the Persian Empire has been described by Greek historians in great detail, but we don't have an
Right.
account of ancient Indian history
But
that is
I will tell you the
contemporary.
problem here. I will tell you the problem here, because when the Mughals were coming, or the sultans were coming for invasions and all, there were so many places burnt down, especially Nalanda University and Tamil University were burnt down. It is
Yes,
said
I
that they
agree.
burned for about months. There would be so much written information in those universities that could have saved us. Maybe a leg, and we would not have been so critical of Indian history, or
Hmm.
people not preserving it enough, because maybe it was preserved, but maybe it was destroyed before it could be, I would say, displayed to the whole world, or something like that, because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
always faced invasions as far as we go back.
Um, I see what you're saying, but
Hmm.
you have to acknowledge that a lot of the literary production of Nalanda and other great monasteries was moved to Tibet.
Hmm.
It was moved to Tibet, and there's no evidence of any history in there. These texts are all in Tibet, and as far as we can tell, there has never been a great interest in history writing in the Buddhist monasteries. If there was, that would be
Right.
fine, but we don't know that. And
Other than that,
certainly,
temples that were burnt, and so many places that were looted, we cannot always be sure that there was no sort of written information there. Definitely, we can say India did not have a habit, was not fond, or writing was not a forte. But there might be some things
well,
that have been
there was
destroyed over the time, and we missed out on.
yeah, this is of course purely speculative. You can say that there were all kinds of things going on that were destroyed, but that still doesn't make ancient Indian imperial history understandable, because archaeologically also we don't have evidence of, let's say, a unified empire. If you read the texts that we have of that time, which are Greek, it doesn't look imperial at all. And so I don't think this is a shortcoming. My point is that it just makes it different, but it doesn't mean it's a shortcoming. Personally, I'm not a great fan of the ancient empires, but and if you don't have one, it's quite okay. But I do believe that ancient Indian writing was primarily religious, and I think the historical writings begin in the Middle Ages. But if I am wrong, that's only because it may have been destroyed, but that is purely speculative. In any case, I think the urban focus that Mediterranean, and particularly Roman history has always had, does not work for India. There's a very different thing going on there. One thing that is very different is that we have to consider Indian history in connection with especially Central Asia and Iran. There's a lot of movement from there over the centuries, and this is something that sets it apart from Europe. Turks and Mongols and many other people who came to India and the Middle East had an enormous impact on that area and also on China, but they had no impact on Europe. Europe was kind of outside of this nomadic tribal Eurasian realm. So this is something that makes Asian history and Middle Eastern history very different from European history, which was much more, I would say, unrelated to that nomadic world. Like Japan. Japan has the same. And Southeast Asia, to some extent, the mainland also did not participate in this Turco-Mongol history to the same degree as India did. So instead of looking at cities, and ancient cities in particular, I think we should look at these areas that had a great impact on the history of India until the British arrived. In fact, until the British become territorial rulers. And then, of course, there's also the Indian Ocean, which is very important. And there's another thing that sets India apart, the Indian Ocean history. And all these things really developed in a big way, not in ancient times, but in, I would say, maybe Gupta times, but late Gupta times, and then after that. But people don't like to hear that things are happening in the medieval period, not in the ancient period, because the more ancient, the more dignified they think. This is the obsession that people have. And I know this obsession very well because it's very strong in Europe. People in Europe want to make themselves believe that they have an ancient history, whereas in fact, it's basically from the 12th century AD. Yes. And if you consider Greece part of Europe, but Greece was totally unknown in Europe for a very long time. So I would say that Europeans have a similar uncluttering job to do, and they did it to some extent. But it's still the case that everything that is considered ancient has more let's say, prestige. And here in Athens, if you go out the door here, you see that every European country has an institution of ancient Greek culture, usually very nice. The Americans have it too. They invest enormous amount of money and energy in proving this connection, proving that connection with the ancient Greek past, which, by the way, wasn't half as nice as people think. Yeah, if you keep in mind what the 5th century BC, which is the golden age of Greece, was a century of warfare. Extremely
And
bloody,
that's what they
extremely
attack
blood.
at the golden age because they want that to go down in history books as something significant.
Well, this was bloody warfare. You know, ancient military techniques were horrible. So, yes, but at the same time, it was the golden age of philosophy and so on in Europe. Nonetheless, I think that in India, you have a very similar situation, although it's also different, that people, they want to know about the ancient past. You know, this is the origin of their culture. And they don't want to hear about the medieval dark age. This was the dark age, but in fact, even in Europe, this was the formative period of European culture, more than ancient Greece. And so this is what my book Al-Hind is about. It is trying to show that the origins of Indian culture are mostly medieval, and that we should get over our obsession with the ancient past. By which I don't mean to suggest that I don't find it interesting. I am very interested in, for example, I understand that the religious developments in ancient India are extremely important, even for
To
many
trace
countries
all
today.
religions, I think we have to go back to ancient history of any continent because, for example, the Native Americans, they don't even have a religion.
Where?
Native Americans, I mean, they don't follow a religion.
Who?
The Native Americans.
Oh, the Native Americans.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, go back to understand religion, you have to go back to ancient and trace it to the place where it started from. And there's no other way about it.
Well, I
So
would
that
say that is also a very dark subject because we don't know much about the history of Native Americans either.
yeah,
But
right.
ancient India, we have a clear indication that many important religious developments occurred. In particular, Buddhism, for example, that is of ancient origin, although we don't know the dates exactly. But I think ancient India is very interesting, also Vedic India for the religious development. But social institutions of modern India are mostly of medieval origin. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It's old enough. It's old enough.
So that was very insightful, and I myself, since I've written about ancient Indian history, a part of it, my dissertation is revolving around that. It kind of throws some light. Maybe now it falls under medieval history. Who knows? 8th century India, is it medieval or is it ancient?
Well, there's very little Buddhism in India today. And there's nothing almost of the Indus Valley. Do you see any important, let's say, heritage of the Indus Valley in your India? I don't see what it is.
No.
And where do you find all the Buddhists? Well, you find them in Thailand
Right.
and so on. But
I
not
think Buddhism and Jainism started at the time, but Jainism kind of stayed in India and Buddhism traveled far east.
Yeah.
It's a matter of consequence, the time, the people, the way things turn out to be, I think. And
Well, no, that's true. And that's, of course, an interesting story as well. But I'm only
Right.
saying that today in India, Buddhism is a marginal religion.
Right.
That's all. I'm not saying that it
Yeah.
is marginal in
Right. And I have
Cambodia.
a friend who is Buddhist, and
But
very few people
so
have met that.
anyway, my opinion is that um, the environment, the Indian environment and geography are really key to all these developments. So I think that if I had any good idea, this idea was that you should look at the environmental history of an area before you can understand the religious and intellectual development. That's what I try to show in these 5 volumes,
Yeah.
and
And
even in the
what I
sixth,
right.
and in the 6th volume also. But this,
It's
for
a work in
example, this
progress.
idea about urbanism is one of them, but that's not the only idea.
That was very insightful, Professor. And
Well,
I'm so
it's very
glad.
rough. I think if you're interested in the idea, you should take a look at it. But
I
don't
will
forget this
definitely.
is
I will take a look
it's
at it. I will ask you
yeah
the
it's
exact
it's
pages I
it's a
should
very
read.
long
No, but I'll ask
story.
you the exact pages I should read to get the crux out of it, so that I can save some time.
It's up to you, but it is maybe how many 2,000 pages,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
it cannot easily summarize in a few minutes.
Right. Al-Hind is also in our syllabi or course content for honors in history during our graduation. It's an essential reading, I think, or a suggested reading. I think it's an essential reading in medieval history.
Yeah, this is true. And
Right.
if you look at the syllabi, it is used in many universities. I
Yeah.
don't know how many, but I see it online. That's
Right.
fine. I was just trying to give you a rough idea of what I had in mind. I found Indian history extremely interesting, but if you don't mind my saying so, a lot of books on Indian history are very dry.
Is it? Yeah.
Well,
I
it
would love
shouldn't
to
be.
know
It
why.
shouldn't be. And there are
Yeah.
also many interesting books about it, but many of them are very dry.
And what do you mean by
But
dry?
well, for example, history of taxation and revenue collection.
Ah, okay.
How many people find that exciting?
Not many.
It is a kind of paradox that
It's like you're
such
punishing
an
someone with a book.
huh?
It's like you're punishing someone with a book by writing it and by publishing it.
Yeah. My point is that everybody can see that India is a very complex and interesting
Yeah. India is
culture.
actually very diverse. Yeah,
But
that's the beauty, and that's also the complexity behind it.
I yes,
Extremely diverse.
but sometimes the history writing is very academic and sort of proper.
Right. I
And I
agree.
think people should use their imagination and give Indian history back to the reader,
Right.
and don't turn it into some kind of boring story.
Right.
It should be a thrilling story.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I may write some fiction inspired from
Well, Indian
whatever you
fiction, for
said.
example, does not suffer from this deficiency. It is not boring. Indian fiction is very well known,
Yeah.
and historical
That's why
fiction also.
there's a lot of restriction in the academic forum when you're writing something as like a historical piece, because you have to be very accurate and you have to know what you're writing. You have to own it. So there's a lot of
Oh yeah.
fear, or it's not fear, but there's a lot of contention, and you have to base everything out, and it's a long process. Since you've been writing for so many years, Al-Hind is a long process. It has been a long process, so it
Yeah.
steals a lot with creativity and imagination in the beginning of the process itself. And that is what literature doesn't.
Well,
In terms of literature, I think you can imagine, go wild and keep writing about it. And if it turns out to be good, it's good. Arundhati Roy, she wrote, she wrote The God of Small Things, and an interviewer asked her, so I don't remember the question, but she said, my book offends everyone a little. So I think that's safe.
Yes, yes.
And I think
I
people
would
have
say,
stopped
oh,
saying,
good for you.
yeah,
Well,
right.
I find Indian fiction writers are have abundant qualities, and they're never boring. But Indian
Hmm.
history writing, often they're very afraid that they make a mistake, and it can be very dry.
Right. I think
And
that's
this is
how it's taught here, and that's the culture
yeah.
that is propagated here. So, yeah,
As
if you
long as
kind of go into being creative or imaginative, I think it falls under memory history or oral history or public history. It's not normative or the prescriptive information or the stats or data that you have to write for exams, for example, competitive exams or so. So that's one
yeah.
issue surrounding it as well.
Why? Well, I think that apart from decluttering Indian history, it should be possible to
Right,
reintroduce imagination without being
right,
afraid that people will accuse you that you make a mistake of a factual
right,
kind.
right.
This is the thing, and I would say tradition should be inspiring, but it should not be stifling.
Hmm.
I think you can have respect for tradition, and that still doesn't mean that you cannot be
It can free you in
innovative.
a way. It should not bound you. It should free you.
Yeah. Well, this is one thing I like in the United States, that the respect for tradition exists, but it's also a place where you can actually see that people worship the new. They worship the new. If it is not new, you won't even get a publisher. So this is what I like about the United States.
What's fresh?
Doesn't have, huh?
Whatever's fresh out of the oven. Whatever is fresh out of the oven.
Yes, yes, exactly. Otherwise, people lose interest very quickly.
Hmm.
So, and this is not the same in Europe either. Europe is much more hidebound.
Hmm.
And in India, people have, of course, also respect for their predecessors. And this is all fine and well, but you must be able to move the field in new directions without
Right.
fearing for your job security.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because I
So,
think that, like we also discussed on our in our conversations, we've discussed about the issue of population and the kind of challenges it poses uh, to India to be
mhm.
competitive and search for the best job, the best lifestyle. It's
Yeah, yeah,
the real rush. I think you mentioned you coming to Delhi and seeing, and over the years seeing how India has changed and evolved or
well, yes, it has
developed.
changed a lot. But,
Hmm.
and all these pressures are you can find them in all countries. The
Hmm.
pressure to conform to a certain style or genre is, of course,
Yeah.
found everywhere. But I found it very strong
Hmm.
in Europe and India, but not so strong in the United States,
Right.
where it can become very wild at times.
Hmm.
But it's more innovative. That's my opinion. Usually, not always.
Hmm.
So this is what I hope that people will do with Indian history. Forget about
Definitely. Uh, I am so grateful we could have this conversation. We could speak about it. And since you're already working on the new volume, I would be delighted to read it ASAP. And I will definitely ask you the
yes.
particular pages so that I do not end up
Well,
messing up my
I,
brain. 'Cause-
yeah, you'll get it, but I'm still working on it. It will take some more time.
Hmm.
It has it's on the 18th century. which is, of
Hmm.
course, very much a controversial century still.
Hmm.
But that's what it
Right.
is about, and I really enjoy it. I'm working on Tipu Sultan at the moment, and
How is
I
Greece?
learn a
How
lot.
is the weather and how are
How
you?
he is,
Greece, Greece,
I don't know. Huh?
Greece, Athens,
Uh,
the place you're staying in.
oh, where I'm living in Athens? I didn't understand.
Yeah, I lost you for a second. I'm saying, how is Athens, Greece, and what all historical places have you explored there yet? I think you've been staying there for quite some time now.
Yeah, since about 5 years, 6 years
Right,
maybe. And
right,
this is only possible because of the internet. You can get all these sources on the internet, or you have to have them yourself. But
right.
20 years ago, I could not have lived here. I would have lived in the United States because I needed a library. But as you can see, I have a library here.
Yes, yes, I've seen your library. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is all about the 18th century, and
Hmm.
there's also an amazing number on Internet Archive.
Hmm.
All the sources on Tipu Sultan are on the internet.
Hmm.
So this is really an amazing luxury that you can more or less work anywhere you want. And I
Hmm.
live in Greece. I don't know because it's a very nice
And you know,
country to live
you
in.
an edge to write better. Spaces like where you're living right now, they give you an edge. I think they support you in a way for your creativity or for your imagination. Or they help you write.
Um, what do you mean? That they support me?
No, the space
I'm
in
not
itself. I mean,
supported by anybody except
had you been in USA,
huh?
it's a hectic
I
country.
don't
Athens is
understand the
much
point.
slower. Greece is much slower.
Hmm?
You can sit and actually ponder and
Oh,
think.
you mean here in Athens?
Hmm.
Um, for me, yes, but it's kind of a big city,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of people moving through Athens. It has a
Hmm.
lot of tourists also and a lot of
Tourism.
scholarship.
Hmm.
But I don't have to deal with that. Um, I only work on my own books, and I can do whatever I want now because I don't have to teach anymore.
Do you miss teaching?
What's that?
Do you miss teaching? Uh, as a
Oh, no, not at all.
not at
I give
all.
lectures online. No, I give lectures online, and I travel. I've been to India, Kolkata, Aligarh, Delhi, and so on. And I hope to go back in the fall. So this is what I do. This is also like teaching,
Right. So if I would
but you
win
don't.
that,
But no,
uh,
it's much more interesting than teaching if you give just lectures,
yeah.
because
Hmm.
I don't have to deal with students' careers and so on, which is fine. But I am more interested in finishing my books and give lectures in this way, which I
Right.
hope to continue.
Right.
Uh,
I hope.
but if you can,
I do hope when you come to Delhi, you might be able to give a lecture in my college. We'll be delighted to have
I
you.
will. Okay, yeah, I will start working on this in August if the aviation situation is okay. I want to
Hmm.
travel to India in September and October.
Yeah. I hope
Include,
it gets.
include, and I will give some lectures in Delhi, and I'll
Hmm.
let you know.
Sure. Sure. Thank
And
you
then
so
I'll
much,
go to
Professor.
Mysore.
Yeah, Mysore. You mentioned you've been
I want
to
to go
Mysore,
from
and
Delhi to Mysore after that.
right, you have to go there for some
I've
research.
been, yes, I've been there already.
Yeah, you have to still go there
Yes,
for some research purpose, right? Yeah.
yes. It's
Hmm.
called Tipu Mania.
Hmm.
Tipu Mania.
Yeah, it's about Tipu Sultan, the something you're writing about the medieval times. Yeah.
Well, he has become my current subject, and I must say it's really something else. And so I go to Mysore, and then I go to Indonesia, East Indonesia. But I'm afraid I took already, let's see, 1 hour,
Yeah.
and
I
I think we
thought
better hang up.
I might be getting you late, but you have so much on your plate already. You're writing multiple pieces. But thank you so much for your time, Professor. And it was an insightful discussion. And I do hope to connect and talk to you again. And
Yeah, I hope without the intervention of faulty technology, because I cannot hear you that well.
can you hear me now?
Yeah,
If I speak much louder, yeah. I'm saying thank you so much. That was really insightful. And I thought I was taking up a lot of your time because it's 1 hour already, and you have so many pieces to write that you're working on. So I will leave
yeah.
you to
Don't
that.
worry, don't
So
worry.
much
Yeah,
for thank you so much for taking out the time, and I do hope to have another conversation with you soon about some other topic, hopefully.
yes,
Maybe about Tipu
yes.
Sultan, maybe about after your visit to Mysore, and then we can talk about it.
Anything you suggest, and
All
that
right,
I know
thank you.
something about. Oh,
Yeah,
you're welcome, and good luck. Are you going to post it somewhere?
yes, I'm going to post it on YouTube, and I'm going to send you the link.
Oh, okay. Do send me the
All
link
right.
then, and
Yes,
good
yes,
luck.
definitely. Thank you. Thank you. Good day, Professor. Good day.
Good day.
Good day.